Good morning again. Have you ever felt trapped? Felt like that there was no answer, there was no place to go? Could have happened because of, I don't know why we have Ezekiel up there, but we're not going to be in Ezekiel. We're going to be in Exodus. We're going to be in Exodus chapter 14. So I don't know if that was a miscommunication between him and I. So he's going to scramble back there while I talk, trying to put our scriptures up there. So, I may have told you Ezekiel, but I meant Exodus. So sorry about that, Tim. I want you just to think about how easy it can happen sometimes where you feel like you're trapped, like you feel surrounded. You seem like you've made all the right choices, seem like you've said all the right things and done all the right things, but yet you wake up one morning and you feel trapped. It could be because of something a doctor said to you, and you feel like there's no other alternatives. I got no place to go. It could be because you walked into work one day and the boss says, "Man, I don't need you anymore. You need to go. Clean out your stuff and go." And now you look around and you say, what have I done? Why do I feel so abandoned? Why do I feel trapped? Why am I so afraid? It can be, and I've dealt with this a lot. One day you come home and your wife or your husband says, "I don't love you anymore. And you need to go. Or I'm going to go and I'm taking the kids with me." And you look around and you think, how did I get here? What happened? What did I miss? Was there something somebody said that I could have caught that I didn't catch? And now I feel hopeless. And now I'm afraid. And I'm angry. And I'm depressed. And I'm exasperated. And all of those things come into play. and I'm looking around and saying, what happened? How did I get here? We're going to look at a story this morning. And we're going to look at bits and pieces of it, because I want you to see what happened when a group of people felt just like that. Now, this was on a bigger scale. This was a lot bigger scale. But it's still just as debilitating and just as depressing and just as aggravating and just as hopeless when you feel like that as an individual. And you look around and you say, what can I do? There's nothing to, and then to figure out that maybe God put you here and you never counted on that. That God put you here and you looked around and said, "Man, I don't deserve this. Why would you do that to me?" And yet here you are nonetheless. And your back's against the wall and all the enemy is in front of you, or a perceived enemy. People that you think are your enemy are all in front of you, and you can't go left, you can't go right, you can't go back, and you can't go forward. And say, now what? And in Ezekiel chapter 14, there's a story about the nation of Israel. And this story is about them coming out of the promised land, a large group of them. And they have come about 2 months or so. They've been wandering around for a while. God's been taking them around, and God's got a plan that they don't understand. They haven't been consulted. They haven't been asked if they approve. God's got a plan. And I want to read to you the first 4 verses of chapter 14 that we were supposed to have up there. But I don't know if we do or not. Yes, we do. He's a good man. Did I say Ezekiel again? I mean Exodus. Robert is going to keep me straight. I mean Exodus. Verse 1 says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. They are to encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal-zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert, and I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them, but I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all of his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord." So the Israelites did this. Now, they weren't asked. They didn't have a meeting that God said, what do you think about this? God told Moses, said, I want you to take them, and I want you to take them down by the sea, and I want you to trap them in a cul-de-sac. They got no place to go. And I'm going to put them here, and oh, by the way, I'm going to show up, and I'm going to fix this. And I'm going to do this to show my glory and my power. Now, that's really good for God and Moses. Not so hot for somebody if you're one of the Israelites and you're standing with your back against the wall and Pharaoh's army is coming down the hill and he's coming to kill you and your wife and your family. Well, move on to verse 10. And it says, as the Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to this desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone? Let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. Typical. I've been here. Some of you have been here, where I've looked at God and said, what were you thinking? Why do you have me here? This doesn't make any sense. And now you're scared, and you're angry, and you're depressed, and you're perplexed, and you say, what did I do to deserve this? The Israelites, they look at Moses and said, we told you to leave us alone, didn't we? And now here we are, you got us in this cul-de-sac, and we're trapped. And there's no place to go. Here's a sea behind us, and here's an Egyptian army coming at us, and there's no place to run. You ever felt like that? You ever felt like there was no place to go? That every answer that you asked for was wrong? Or it was negative? Or it was depressing? And you said, I don't know what I'm going to do. How am I going to get myself out of this? And then you've realized there is no way out. There's no way out. There's no little crack where you can slip through. There isn't any place. You've painted yourself into a corner that you can't get yourself out of. That happens to people all the time. Maybe it didn't happen to you lately. Maybe it hadn't happened to you at all. But somebody, I promise you, somebody watching, and I've seen some heads going like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been there. You may be there right now, where you feel trapped. You feel like there's no place to go. You've made one decision after another decision after another decision, and every one of them have turned out bad. None of them turn out good. And now you found yourself, now you're being squeezed and strangled, and you're surrounded, and there's no place to go. And what you don't know is maybe God put you here for a reason. Maybe He's got you here, and you don't know that because He didn't ask your permission. He just showed up one day, and you found yourself, stuck in the mud and can't go no place. And there's no place to turn. You won't let yourself go back. You won't let yourself go forward. And you can't go side to side. It's pretty bad, isn't it? Pretty bad situation. Well, these folks, they get angry. And they're scared. They look at this army and they know what Pharaoh's army is capable of. They have been there 400 years. They have seen the evidence of Pharaoh's army. They know what he's capable of. They know what he can do. You know what Satan can do in your life. You know what evil around you can do. You've seen it before, haven't you? You know what happens when a doctor says, sorry, there ain't nothing I can do. You know what's coming. You know what cancer means. You know what it could mean. You know what happened to your mom or what happened to you. You know what the possibilities are. And for a moment, you're scared and you're angry. I talked to a lady this morning that said that very thing, and I said, you really need to listen to what I have to say this morning. Because there for just a moment, and I'll tell you who it was Pam. Pam got the news she's not a candidate for a lung transplant. That means she's not going to get a lung. That means there is no fix. That means she will die sooner than later. And she said just for a moment, she got angry. Just for a moment. She felt surrounded and trapped by the physical problems in her life. And I looked at these guys and I'm thinking, if I would have been there, what would it have been like for me? Would I have been one of the ones screaming at Moses? Would I have been one of the ones with my fist like this, shaking it at God, and said, how dare you bring me out here for me to watch my children die in this wilderness? And you know what I know? Yeah, that's exactly what I've been doing. Because that's what I've done. So have you. You know, and when you look at what happens here, and you see how perplexed they are, and then you read verse 13, and here's 3 things that Moses tells them. Now, one of them I can't tell you what it says, because some of you would say, oh, that's a bad word. I'm going to spell it for you. Okay? Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm. You will see the deliverance the Lord will bring to you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. Ever. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Now I'm going to go to the last one first. Because the last one, that word, in some commentaries, you know what it actually means? Shut up. Stop talking. Stand there and pay attention and watch. Because when we get involved in this thing, we're trying to fix everything, all we do is mess stuff up. He says, don't be afraid. First off, I got this. Is your God big enough to get you out of this trap you found yourself in? Is he big enough? God's big enough. Pam's God's big enough to get her out of this trap. He is. You know what those of you on live stream didn't see is 4 ladies got up and walked over to where Pam is sitting and sat down with her. That's part of the solution, guys. That's part of how God shows up and makes us okay and gives us the chink that we need in the problem and gives us a way out. You know, when you look at this text and he says, I want you to don't be afraid. Why should they not be afraid? What did Moses know that they didn't? That God put them here. God's already told him what he's going to do. Moses already knows that God's going to show up and they are never going to have a problem with this army again. Moses knows what he's capable of. He's seen a burning bush. He's thrown his staff down and see it turn into a snake. He's watched the firstborn of everything die. The difference between him and them is he didn't forget, they did. They forgot. They forgot what God's capable of. So they're afraid. Don't forget what God's capable of, what you've seen him do in someone like Pam's life, or what you've seen him do in somebody else's life. Don't forget what you've seen him do. Because when we forget, we become afraid. He says, don't be afraid. Stand firm. I mean, stand firm. Stand where you are. Stand firm. Don't start running. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to run into the sea, and that's not going to be good. You're going to run towards Pharaoh, and that's going to be worse. And you already know there's no way out left or right. So stand firm. And then he says, be still. Stop talking. Stop complaining. Stop fighting and arguing. And stop judging. And stop throwing accusations. Stop. Stop and let the peace of God come upon you. God's got this. He's big enough to fix the problem. I don't care how old you are. He's big enough to fix the problem. And he will fix it. And you don't know that he may have you right where you're at, surrounded, trapped, feeling all depressed, because he's got something bigger in store for you. I don't know that, neither do you. But you know what I do? I trust that he's going to do that. So I'm going to say, okay, God, I'm not going to shake my fist at you again. I've seen you work. I've seen you work in spite of my fist shaking and my aggravation and my anger and my rage and my fear. I've seen you work anyway. These folks are fixing to see it too. Now what does Moses know? They ain't never going to see him again, ever. But here he says that you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring today. The Egyptians you see you will never see them again. Moses believes that. Just because they don't doesn't matter. And in verse 19, and I don't have this one written for you, I'm just going to read this for you. The angel of God who had been traveling in front of Israel's army withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from in front of it and stood behind them, coming between the armies of Egypt and Israel. Throughout the night, the cloud brought darkness to one side and the light to the other side. So neither went near the other all night long. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and all that night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on the right and a wall on their left. When you have no way to make an opening, God can. And sometimes it's dramatic. Sometimes it's unbelievable. Can you imagine what they must have thought as they walked through on dry ground, through this sea of water and wall of water on both sides of them, and they walked through on dry ground? And then listen to what he said. The Egyptians pursued them, and all Pharaoh's horses and chariots and horsemen followed them into the sea. During the last watch of the night, the Lord looked down from the pillar of fire and cloud at the Egyptians' army and threw it into confusion. He jammed the wheels of their chariots so that they had difficulty driving. And the Egyptians said, "Let us get away from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Well, basically the rest of the story is, and the way out just closed. And all of the Israelites made it through on dry ground to the other side. And the Egyptians were gone. Just like that. They were gone. Not by anything they did. Not by anything that they planned or been part of. It was just gone. Can God fix the problem in your life? Can He show up one day and you look at it and say, "Oh my, this is insanely incredible"? Can He? Sure He can. Sure, He can show up. Will He? I don't know. I don't know what He's going to do. But I know that He loves me. I know that He loves us. And I know that He will provide a way of escape all the time. He will provide that for us. So when you feel trapped, I want you to learn what Israel learned. I want you first off to learn what Moses told them. Don't be afraid. Stand firm and be still. Let God do His work. Let Him do His work. It may not be in your time frame. It may not be what you thought was going to happen. You know, I know what you may have wanted, but maybe that's not what He had planned for. And then the last verse of chapter 14 says, in verse 31, and it says, "And when the Israelites saw the mighty hand of the Lord displayed against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and put their trust in Him and in Moses, His servant." Now, it didn't last long. They get kind of off kilter again just very shortly. But for that moment in time, they feared God. You know what they saw on the other side of the sea? They saw all the dead bodies of the Egyptians. All those dead bodies. And they knew that God had showed up. You ever been surrounded and had God show up? Have you ever been trapped? Or are you trapped now? Now, if you're a member of the church, you're part of God's family, you understand this text. You understand what this means. And you may not have connected that it connected to you, and you felt that one day, and then all of a sudden God showed up and fixed it. But you know it's possible. And if you really think back and you ponder on this text, you'll say, you know, that did happen to me. I did get to that place where I was sitting in my own house all alone and knew I had no answers. I had a gun in my house for a long time. And there's a gun in a box, in a red box. And it had, in the box there were 6 shells. It was a revolver, had 6 shells, and they were hollow points. And if you know what that means, those bullets are designed to do the most damage that they can possibly do. And I got this gun from a guy. When I went into his house, I was called by his wife, and I got to his house, and he's sitting in his recliner in the living room, and the gun is laying on the floor, right there on the floor, loaded. When I walk in, I can see the bullets in the chambers, and I can see that they're hollow points. I know. And that gun is laying on the floor, and he's crying, and his wife is crying, and I'm scared to death. I've got that gun. And that guy is still alive today. Not because of me. Not because of me. I was too scared. I'll be honest, I was too scared. But he gave me that gun, and I've had that gun for 30 years. It's never been shot, never fired it. But it's a testimony to me. I won't give it away. I want it always. I want to know where it is, because it's a testimony to me as how it can get when you let this stuff surround you and there is no hope. And that is the answer that some people have. They take a gun. Thankfully, he never picked it up. I picked it up. He let me pick it up. I unloaded it on the spot, and I put it in my car. And I still have it to this day. But there are too many times when that doesn't happen. And that's the only route. If you're in this place or you're watching this morning and you're at that place, remember, don't be afraid. Stand firm. Be still. God's got this. God's big enough to fix the problems. You may have gotten to a point and you say, man, there is no way God can fix this. Yes, He can. He can fix bigger problems than yours. I promise. There isn't a problem that you could have that He can't fix. But He is not going to make you listen. He is going to present this to you and say, hey, here it is. And you have to respond to Him the way you're supposed to. He wants you to be obedient to Him. He wants you to come to Him on His terms, to repent of your sins, be baptized into Christ, and follow Him every step of your life. And I'm not going to tell you it's all going to get great, because I'm looking around here with people who have been following for a long time, and sometimes your life's still a mess, isn't it? Sometimes you work yourself into a corner and you're trapped again, and you have to depend on God all over again. And sometimes, for some of us, somebody else does it to us, and we're going, again? I got to deal with this again? Yeah. But you know what? Having a relationship with God gives me hope. And when you have a gun sitting on the floor in front of you, that's hopeless. So we're going to sing a song, and I want you to think about this story, and I want you to think about where you sit today. Do you feel trapped? If you're a member of the church and you're part of God's family, don't be afraid. Stand firm. Be still. And in that text, I didn't read that part, Moses tells them, get up, move forward. Well, forward was an ocean, was the sea. And he tells them, move forward. When God tells you to move, move. When He tells you to move, move. I'm going to tell you again, when He tells you to move, move. Don't get stuck in the place you are, because that will not benefit anybody. Well, like I said, we're going to sing this song, and I want you to really think about where you are. And especially if you're not part of the family of God. If you're not part of the family of God, here's a great opportunity for you to come forward and for you to sit down with one of us and let us talk to you. And let us help you to find a relationship with God that can give you the hope that maybe you don't have. Ken, let's stand and sing.